Good morning, everybody. We are just welcoming people, letting everybody in. So I'm just going to give everybody a chance to get in, get settled. We've got some great numbers. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and join us today on this webinar. Really appreciate your time. I'm going to just give everybody maybe 1 or 2 more minutes just to see if we get any more people joining, and then I'll start with the introductions and we'll do a run through of what the morning's going to look like for you. But if you could perhaps maybe set aside 45 minutes, maybe no more than an hour. Obviously, if any of you do need to leave, we are recording this session. So if you aren't able to stay till the end, you'll be able to watch this on the replay, which we will be posting to our YouTube channel and also within our Facebook group. So I don't think we've got any more people in the lobby waiting, so I am going to make a start. So a very warm welcome from all of us. I'm joined here today by our two special guests. So I've got Peter Rodway, who is from the Specialist Language Courses. And I've also got joining us today one of our very own nurses who joined us about 2 years ago now from Mauritius, Davina Mahadea. So Davina's also going to talk to you about her journey. So really the purpose of today is knowing that so many of you are in our recruitment pipeline. You may be going through the NMC registration process, and many of you may be challenged or not quite passing your English language test. So the reason for today is to give you as much information, tips, tricks, hints, anything that you want to call it, to really help you to get your English language, whether that is your OET or whether that is through IELTS. But what Peter's going to do is he's actually going to be able to shine a light on the two and maybe talk to you about the benefits of both. And how the preparations can really help you to actually secure a place here in the UK. For those of you that are here, and we do have a lot of you, which is great, we are going to be giving away 2 prizes, which are going to be selected at random. We're not going to do that on the call, just to keep the flow of everything. We're going to do this offline. So we do have a moderator who's got all of your email addresses. We're going to take the email addresses, put them into a random online system where we're going to be able to select at random 2 of you who will go away today with 2 free OET prep courses. So they are 3-month self-study preparation for the OET. So there'll be 2 of you selected for that today. I think that's everything from my side. We are going to open up at the end for a Q&A. So please do feel free to ask any questions. If there's anything that springs to mind whilst you're listening, perhaps pop your question in the chat so that you don't forget what you're thinking about, and then we can pick up that question for you later on, and then we can address your question. So we will be doing the Q&A at the end just to keep the flow. We won't be stopping for questions. We'll do that at the end. So without further ado, let me first introduce to you Peter Rodway from our Specialist Language Courses, and he will talk you through everything to do with the English language for you this morning.
Absolutely. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm not sure how many of you will have access to the chat, but if you have got access to the chat box, you're very welcome to put questions in all the way through, and we'll pick those up at the end. And I might ask you a few things as we go along as well. So if any of you could put just a yes or a Y in the chat so I know who's able to do that, that would be really useful now. But if not, I'll continue. So my name is Peter Rodway. I've been an English teacher and an English teacher trainer for nearly 20 years now, and I'm the co-founder and director of a company called SLC, which means Specialist Language Courses. We're the UK's leading provider of medical English, OET preparation and arts preparation to nurses and doctors. And between the end of last year and this year, We've taught over 4,000 students and prepared them for OET, around about 5,000 or 6,000 students using our medical English programs around the world as well. We're an accredited OET provider, and we are OET's partner to deliver the official OET preparation course. We are very, very lucky to have quite a special person on our team, Virginia Allen. You may have seen her work elsewhere. Virginia's a nurse. Well, it says ex-nurse on the slide, but she's actually a practicing nurse still. Virginia is the author of Cambridge English for Nursing, which you may have used in nursing college. She's the author of the official OET preparation books, and she writes all of our materials as well. So this is what we're going to talk about today. What are your options for proving your level of English to the NMC so that you can register to practice in the UK? And you have two options. You can use IELTS or you can use OET. And there are some similarities between these tests, and there are some differences as well. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Nobody put anything in the chat earlier, so I'm not sure if this is going to work, but has anybody tried one of these exams before? If you could just put a little note in the chat so that I can see if has anybody attempted IELTS before or attempted OET before? No? Okay, well, so in terms of the similarities, their structure is similar. There are 4 papers on each of these tests. Oh, somebody's going to type something for me. There's 4 papers on each of these tests, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. They take place on one day, so it's a pressurized day. It's a difficult and stressful day. And in order to register with the NMC, you have a high bar, a high target that you're trying to achieve, an advanced level of English. But really, you know, that's kind of where the similarities end. These are 2 very different tests, and what we're going to go through is how they differ and how you might choose between them and how you can prepare for them. Okay, so what level do you need to achieve? You are probably all very well aware, I would think. You know, if you're in the Lincolnshire and Gore Facebook group and you're planning your career in the NHS and coming to the UK to practice, you're aware of what the NMC require of you, and that is that you need an OET B or an IELTS 7 in the reading, listening and speaking, and an OET C+ and an IELTS 6.5 in the writing. But what does that really mean, right? What does it mean? What are these levels? What are these numbers? What do these letters mean? So the picture that you can see on the screen, on the left-hand side, there is a language framework called the CEFR. And that has, at the very top of that, there is C2. And at the bottom of that, there is A1. Now, the CEFR is not an exam. It's a framework that allows us to describe any language at all. So we can talk about English using the CEFR, and we will today, but we can talk about any language. For example, when I was quite a bit younger, I did French at school, so for my up to kind of GCSE level. So my level of French is probably around an A2. You know, I studied it formally, but I certainly don't use it now. But I remember a good portion of it. But I'm, you know, a basic user of French. I lived in Japan for 5 years. I spoke Japanese daily in the office with my colleagues. My level of Japanese is probably around a B2. And you can see that that's kind of like halfway up that scale there of a CEFR. The level that the NMC require of you, whether you're taking IELTS or OET, is C1, and C1 is advanced level. And you can see how that maps across with IELTS and OET. So the C1 banding is a 7, 7.5 to 8, and then the OET B score. So the first thing I need to share with you is that, you know, don't feel disheartened if you've tried these tests before or you're struggling in some way to meet the requirements here, because it doesn't mean you can't speak English. You know, the C1 level is a very, very high level to achieve. It's difficult to achieve it without preparation and study. And actually, for most purposes in daily life, if you are operating at a B2 level, you speak that language, you speak English, just as I spoke Japanese when I was in Japan. It's just that the level that's required for safe and effective practice in the eyes of the NMC is just that one little bit higher to C1. So what is IELTS? I see that Hema has tried IELTS before. So IELTS is, well, the first thing I would say about IELTS is that it is an excellent test. It's a very mature test. There's lots of great materials out there, but it was not designed for nurses and doctors. It wasn't designed for medical practitioners. It's an academic English test that actually is designed for entry into university. So you can prove your level of English so that you can study on a university course. And testing your academic English is not the same as testing your ability to communicate daily. It's also not the same as testing your ability to communicate in a clinical environment. So on the test, you'll see the listening, the reading, the writing, the speaking, same as other tests. The listening, one of the things you will listen to, in fact, you'll listen to it twice, is an academic conversation, academic lectures. The reading paper will be on academic topics. The writing, there are two types of writing tasks on IELTS. One of them is to understand a set of data. That's usually some graphs or some numbers, and then you have to explain what's going on with those graphs and those numbers. And the other part of the writing is an academic essay. If you have not been studying recently in any language, writing an academic essay is a difficult thing to do. There's certain skills that you need to acquire to do that properly. And that's a skill that's separate to your English language ability. That's a study skill, that's an academic skill. So when you're going to be attempting IELTS, you do need to get back into this habit of thinking about your academic skill set, and hark back to maybe your university studies, because that's where you will have picked up those kind of skills. So what do you need to study for IELTS? Well, those are the skills, but you also need a very, very large vocabulary. IELTS can cover almost any topic. I've got a list of topics in a minute so that you can see. So in order to perform well on IELTS, you need a really, really broad range of vocabulary. And that's really useful, because it means if you've got a broad range of vocabulary, you can say lots of things about lots of different topics, and that's a good thing. But in order to prepare and study for it, it does mean that you need to really broaden your vocabulary outside of the clinical space and outside of the day-to-day English space. Writing reports, report writing, these academic study skills, I mean, that may be something that you'll need to study again, depending on how long ago you did your nursing degree. How to talk about abstract questions, give opinions. I think one of the most challenging things for me with IELTS, even as a native speaker of English, is that sometimes on the IELTS paper you can be a bit unlucky, and you will be asked to give your opinion on a topic, and actually you might not have an opinion on that topic. It might not be something that you're very interested in. It might not be something that you know about. So that can be a real challenge. And that's why it's really key when you're studying for IELTS, not just to do practice papers and exam papers. You need to broaden your general knowledge. You need to watch the news. You need to read academic articles. You need to learn as many words as you can, because quite a lot of different things might come up. So this is some more about academic IELTS. It's complex. Academic language is formal language. It's not the type of language that you will use when you're speaking to someone, at work, really. The level 7 for IELTS. Remember I said that IELTS was designed to give you entry into a university. Well, most universities don't require a 7. The level that the NMC require on IELTS, 7 academic. The kind of universities that require a 7 are Cambridge and Oxford and Harvard, and they're the really top level high class universities. Most international students would need to get between a 5 and a 6, maybe a 6.5 for some of the topics to study in English in an international university. So what you're being asked to do is hard, and it's really important that you take that seriously as a learner, but also that you get support from your friends, from your family, from your potential employers, from the people around you, to say, well, look, I'm doing something that's quite challenging here, and that level of that support will help you to get through what is a pressurized and difficult thing to do. And here are some of the IELTS subjects. So you can see on the right column at the top, health and healthcare systems. is a topic that can come up in IELTS. So if you're very, very lucky on the day, you'll get a reading question or a writing question about health and healthcare, and then, you know, fantastic. It's something that you're comfortable with, and you can probably do with some ease. But if you look at the other topics, all of this might happen on your IELTS paper. Migration, urban versus rural living, energy, money, travel and tourism. It really can be any topic. So it's quite difficult to prepare everything. It's difficult to prepare for every possibility on IELTS, and that's actually how it's designed. You're not meant to be able to prepare for everything. It's meant to show how proficient you are, you know, with your broad knowledge of language already. So let's talk about OET. OET is different in as much that it was designed for you. It was designed for nurses. It was designed for doctors. There are 12 other professions that it was designed for, but it's designed for healthcare practitioners. And you can see the difference in the type of task that you'll be doing in OET. The listening task usually will contain something a little more informal or work-based, so a team briefing or a handover with a colleague, but it's in a clinical context. Okay, and you might also get a longer talk, but on a healthcare topic. So yes, it might use academic language in the longer talk, but it will be on a healthcare topic. So something like a TED talk, if you've ever seen one of those on YouTube, that's kind of similar to the kind of thing you'll listen to in the listening. Reading, again, healthcare topics. Writing is not an essay, it's a letter. You write a letter to a colleague or a peer or another specialist to refer a patient, and you have their case notes. And so, you know, it's not that it's easy to write a formal letter or to make a referral for a patient, but it is something that you can feel more comfortable with, and it's something that you can practice, I would say, more easily than writing an academic essay. It's a shorter piece of writing. And the speaking is a role play, and you are being a nurse. So you will do a role play with an interlocutor, and that person will play a role, either a patient or a family member, and you're a nurse and you're talking about you know, a clinical, you're speaking in a clinical context. So it's not that OET is easier at all, actually, because if you remember the chart at the start of the slides, OETB is the same language level as IELTS 7. So it's not easier in terms of language level, but it is something that you should feel more comfortable with, that the context should be more familiar. The range of language, whilst you still need to be broad to show how good you are, it's still within one area, one sphere that you can learn more of the words of, you know, more easily and more quickly. It's simple as that. Now, one thing I would like to say about it, because I just said it was a bit easier to learn the vocabulary you need, just so that you know, there are 12 OET tests. When you take an OET test, if you take an OET test, you will take a test called OET Nursing, okay? But there are other OET tests. And why am I telling you this? Why is that important? It's because of these skills. The listening and the reading on the OET paper could be from any of the professions. So one of the important skills and techniques that you can pick up when you're preparing for OET is to identify quickly who's speaking, what am I reading? You know, is it radiography? Is it podiatry? Is it nursing? Is it medicine? So that then you can access the vocabulary that you already have in those specific areas. So that's a really important skill to pick up here. But the productive parts of language, so when you produce writing, when you produce speaking, those are profession specific. So you will write as a nurse and you will speak as a nurse. Okay, and for me, this is maybe the most important slide, because I think we need to understand together that the type of language you're going to be using as a nurse, whether it's with a patient or with a family member, it's very special. It's quite a unique type of communication because of the setting that you're in. So I'm just going to go through these 4 areas that are quite unique to the OET test. And there's something that you need to study if you want to perform well. But it's also, I think, something that you can find really interesting as well, because it's so close to what you do for your job. So elicit and deal with sensitive topics. What does that mean? Elicit means to draw something out, to get something from someone. Sensitive topic, well, you're a healthcare professional. You know, you could be speaking to someone about their mental health, their sexual health, the level of pain they're in. All of these things are not things that some people want to talk about. You know, some of these things are embarrassing. Some of these things are difficult to talk about. But in order to give them the best care, you need to be able to get as much of that information out of someone as you can. So in the OET test and the OET speaking, you'll learn those skills, you know, how to get difficult information from people and put them at ease, you know, reassure them. You can see the next one is reassure someone who is anxious. So that will maybe link with getting someone to speak to you about their condition, but it equally could be, you know, reassuring a family member, you know, if their mum or their dad has been in surgery for 4 hours and they want to know what's going on, and you're the first person that they come and speak to. They're anxious, they're worried, and you need to be able to employ communicative strategies to reassure them, to help them, and to calm them down. And you won't find that in any other type of English test, really. So this is all really special stuff. Top right, translate specialist register into lay language. That's an academic English way of saying use simpler words, because not all of your patients and not all of the family members of patients will know the things that you know about medical English. They won't know all of the names of the parts of the body. They won't know the names of drugs. They won't know the terms for operations. So you need to speak to them in a way that they can understand. So don't use technical terms. Sometimes, you know, use technical terms when you're asked to on this test. But if the task is to, you know, reassure an older person, you know, about what's going on and what's going to happen next with their treatment plan, don't use complicated language. Use language that they can understand. You know, translate that specialist language into lay language. That's everyday language. And then the final one, power relationship between interlocutor and candidate. Now, this is really an interesting one for those of you who've taken IELTS, because what happens usually with IELTS is that the person you're speaking to and doing the role play with is your examiner, usually. So they're grading you as you go along. With OET, the person you're speaking to is an actor. It's usually somebody from the exam center or a school, but they're not grading you. Everything gets recorded and it gets sent away to be listened to by somebody to give you your scores. And it's listened to. They're not watching you. So all of your body communication, all of your body language, everything, the expressions on your face, the examiner can't see those. So you're only going to be graded on what the examiner can hear on the tape or on the recording. So it's really important that you take control of that role play. You don't just answer the questions. You know, you're a medical professional, and in this role play, somebody has come to you to ask for advice. It's because you are the knowledgeable person. You are the person they are relying on. So you need to be in control of the power relationship in that role play, in that conversation, which, you know, I'd say does mirror probably what you need to do in real life in your job as well. You know, it's you're the person that they're coming to for advice, for care, for reassurance. So you need to be in control of that communication. So what you need to study, wide range of language, but it's all healthcare context, so it should be a little bit easier for you. Writing, you will need to learn how to structure a formal letter in English. A lot of people don't write letters anymore, so you know that's something that you. But it's something that you can learn. It's something that you can pick up quite quickly, I think. And technique and strategies. So why am I talking about technique and strategy? I'm going to show you this chart again. The reason I'm talking about technique and strategy is that these tests, IELTS and OET, they are not pass or fail tests. You can't fail IELTS. You can't fail OET, right? You can't pass OET or IELTS. But you hear that language all the time. You know, have you passed OET? Have you passed IELTS? Okay, what they really mean is, have you achieved the score that you need for this task, and your task is to register with the NMC. The NMC want you to have an OET-B or an IELTS 7. So past OET, past IELTS means I got a B. But actually, it's not pass or fail. So why am I talking about technique and strategy? I'm talking about that because it's very possible. Remember when I spoke to you about B2 language level and how basically, you speak the language at that level, at that kind of intermediate, upper intermediate language. So it's possible to answer a question or write something down or speak something actually that doesn't have any errors in it. It could have completely correct grammar. It could have completely correct vocabulary. Everything could be correct, but it might not score you a B and it might not score you a 7 because you haven't shown the examiner that you have a strong command, a broad range of vocabulary. You could have used a more difficult grammar structure. You could have used a different word, and it's those that will get you the higher marks. So if you get a C or a C plus, it doesn't mean you can't speak English, and it doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you didn't show the examiner that they were able to award you those higher marks that we're looking for. So that's all around strategy and that's all around technique at this point because you already speak English. So that's why it's really important, I believe, to prepare. So I said you had two choices, and you do. You are adult learners, and you can do what you want to do. Basically, you can choose IELTS if you wish, but I would strongly recommend OET nursing to you. One reason is that it's entirely relevant to what you are doing. So it's language that you will be able to use even while you're studying. If you have English-speaking patients come into the environment where you're currently practicing nursing, you'll be able to use it immediately. It's also entirely relevant to the job you'll be doing once you land in the UK. And then you need to go on and do another exam. You need to do an exam called OSCE, which is your clinical skills. So that's part of your registration process, and the linguistic criteria of OSCE, so the words that you need to use when you're going through the OSCE stations, there's a really strong link with OET and OET speaking. So if you have studied OET instead of studying IELTS, you already have a little bit of a head start on things like your OSCE preparation. You already know a lot of the language anyway, and I think you can practice more easily the language outside of the classroom. And it's just much more engaging. I'll be completely honest, I mean, IELTS is a perfectly good exam. I've taught it for many years. It's definitely the best exam for academic purposes to get into a university course. But it can be quite dry. It can be a little bit boring sometimes. But, if you're a nurse and you're studying OET, it really shouldn't be boring. It should be quite engaging and interesting, different things that you'll be able to say in the workplace. And overall, the pass rates are higher with preparation. So with preparation, and pass rates, I've used the word pass rate on here, but the amount of nurses that score a B on OET after preparation is higher than the amount of nurses that score a 7 on IELTS after preparation. So how might we prepare? So first thing you need to do for both exams is make sure you understand the exam format very, very well. How long have you got? How many minutes do you have? How many parts are there? How many questions? If you're listening to something, remember your training. Are you listening for the detail or are you listening for the general understanding? So this is the exam format, and that would apply to IELTS or to OET. And the same here. Learn the exam strategies. So how do you score those higher grades? It's not just about answering the question, because you can answer the question, you speak English. It's, what strategy do you employ to get those higher marks? Timing can be a real issue for anyone. The reality of any type of test, whether it's an English language test or a professional test or a driving test or anything, it's stressful because you want to pass and you don't want to fail, and you want to do well. So time can be an issue for some people. So practicing under timed conditions is a good thing to do. And maybe one of the most important ones, the range of your grammar and the accuracy of your grammar and your vocabulary, because again, as I said, you need to show off a bit. You need to show these examiners exactly what you're capable of, the full broad range of your vocabulary and grammar, not just simply answer the question in a correct way. Okay, some resources. So practice tests depending, I don't know where all of you guys are from, but I do know quite a lot about the language industry around the world. And in some parts of the world where the NHS recruits from, where they have local language schools, there is a real heavy reliance on practice tests. If I do 100 practice tests, then I'll definitely be really, really good at taking the exam. It's useful, but it's certainly not, that's not a true statement. If you do 100 practice tests, but you haven't learned any new skills, you haven't learned any strategy, you haven't broadened your vocabulary, you're just iterating, you're just doing the same thing again and again without any real hope of improvement. So practice tests are a useful tool, but you shouldn't rely on them overly. This says OET website because I want to suggest you take OET, but it's the same for IELTS. Both exams have official websites. There's an OET website and there's an IELTS website. The materials that they have on those two websites, the official materials, are by far the safest ones to use. So, you know, there's some, if you go onto YouTube, if you go onto Google and you go onto WhatsApp or you go onto Telegram, you'll find all kinds of things for all of these exams. You shouldn't necessarily use them all and you shouldn't necessarily trust them all. It depends who wrote them, where they came from, when they were produced. You know, these exams change over the years. They add new questions. They change the criteria for the grades. They're not just staying the same all the time. So the official resources will always be up to date, whereas you can't always trust what you find kind of out in the wild on the internet. So start with the official resources. YouTube. Video content is really engaging. It's something that you can do pretty much anywhere. You know, you might even be able to do it on your coffee break at work or, you know, while you're traveling somewhere. There's lots of good content on YouTube and it's free if you don't mind a few adverts. So, you know, it's free material. You don't have to start spending money to prepare. There's official materials and there's free online materials on YouTube that are a really useful place to start. And then, of course, you know, the best way to prepare would be for either exam is to have lessons with a teacher. That's the most expensive way to prepare as well, unfortunately, because it's a teacher's time. But if you do have lessons with a teacher, these are the things you should look out for, in my opinion. With OET, there is an accreditation system. So make sure that the school or the teacher that you're working with is an accredited OET teacher. That's important. There are lots of them. It's not a rare thing. SLC is accredited, but there are many good schools around the world and on the internet that are accredited. So make sure they're accredited. With IELTS, there's no such thing as IELTS accreditation, really. So if anybody says they are, they're not really telling you the full truth. The thing with IELTS, if you're going to study with IELTS, you need to make sure that your teacher understands, or the school understands, the level that you're trying to achieve, because most people don't need IELTS 7. Most people need IELTS 5 or 5.5. So a lot of the materials are aimed at that level, and a lot of the experience of the teachers is at that level. So if you find an IELTS teacher, make sure they understand that you're aiming at a 7 and that they have experience of that and they've got materials to help you do that. Okay, I've come to the end of the informational part of these slides now, but just to let you know a few things that you can do with SLC. We have an online study course called Reach OETB, which you can use on your phone or a laptop. The guys at the NHS Trust will share a discount code for you. There's discounts available to everybody who's come to this webinar or in the Facebook group, so that you can get this a little bit less expensive. And this is also what we're giving away free in the prize draw for the webinar. It's got 60 hours of content covering all the skills. There's also a live open group schedule. So there's real teachers in this course as well on a live platform with an open group. So there could be, you know, 10 people, 15 people in a group. It's not a small group, but it's real teachers, real accredited teachers, all included in that. You also get a CPD certificate for completing it. And then there's OET Prepare, this is the official OET preparation course. You'll see this is powered by SLC. So SLC wrote the materials for this course, and it's SLC teachers, but this is the official OET preparation course that you can get from their website. And then finally, I'll go back to YouTube. YouTube's got some fantastic content on it, and it's all completely free. There's lots of really good content on the SLC YouTube, but equally all of the different accredited OET providers probably have good YouTube content, and there's some great IELTS content out there as well. Just make sure it's aiming at the right level. Okay, I don't know if anybody put any questions during the chat, but we can move on to a Q&A now, and I'll stop sharing these slides.
Well, I would just like to say thank you. That was truly very informative. I don't know about you know, the people watching, but I certainly learned an awful lot, actually. You know, just listening to that, I learned so much. So I think for anybody watching, I really do believe that this is going to be so helpful, just to understand, you know, that difference between the academic and, you know, and the OET. You know, it's so much more relevant to nursing, and the fact that it will then, you know, it's kind of got a double advantage with the OET. So not only are you learning, you know, the language to help you in your role, but then it's going to support the OSCE, which Absolutely. Is, you know, which is that examination that you will be doing in the UK to actually get registered as a nurse. So it's kind of, it's a double advantage.
I completely agree. It's really advantageous to the rest of the process, but equally, if you are doing IELTS, it's to remember the type of exam it is. You know, it's an academic test. So if you are going to do IELTS, make sure that you're studying your academic skills and you're answering things in an academic English way, which is not the same as general English or clinical English that you'll find in OET.
Yeah. I think as well, something that also really resonated with me, and I think, you know, for a lot of people who, if they've had communication with me, I hear on a daily basis, you know, I failed my OET, I failed my IELTS, you know, and that word in itself,
it's so disheartening, isn't it?
It's very disheartening, and it almost makes people feel like, you know, they're not good enough. I'm not good enough. And I think the way that you explained that is that you know, there is no pass or fail. There is no when you say good enough, it's, well, good enough for what? So you know, what you're doing there is you're actually measuring yourself against an entry to get into for a university such as Harvard.
Can I say something a bit naughty that I probably shouldn't say, but this is for the guests rather than the NHS staff in the room. A long time ago, we did a little experiment in the UK with native English speakers who worked in the NHS. So they're NHS people, you know, like David, like Shonad maybe, and they're native English speakers. And we asked them to do an IELTS test, an IELTS writing test. Now, it was a bit unfair because we didn't let them prepare for it. It was a surprise, but nobody got above a 6.
Wow.
These are native English speakers. So, you know, do they speak English? Of course they do. Are they safe to practice as nurses? Of course they are. You know, but that's what we're trying to highlight here, that, you know, it doesn't mean you can't speak English. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean that you're not safe. It's just something that you have to do to be able to assure the NMC, you know, beyond doubt, and that's the level that they've set, and so that's what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And I'm sure people have got questions, but if I may, just to get the ball rolling, and before we go on to Davina, I would just like to put a question to you. Something that you mentioned was about that you've got to show off. You know, in the OET, you have to show off. Now, I know that for many international nurses, particularly the ones who come to us and have interviews, following the feedback from the interviews is sometimes culturally, it's not something that nurses in different cultures actually want to do. This kind of whole show off, you know, particularly when it comes to, you know, showing, for example, you know, and this is outside of showing off your ability, but even when it comes to speaking on a ward, let's say, for example, you know, when you're here and you're working in the UK, it's very much nurse-led, whereas in some cultures the practice is very much doctor-led. So nurses in certain cultures are not used to showing off or speaking up or challenging behaviours and things like that. So would you say that preparation of the OET is almost kind of gearing you up to to get into that kind of mentality of showing up and speaking up.
Absolutely. So, you know, the OET isn't, you know, it's not a clinical test. It's an English language test. So you're not going to lose any points actually for prescribing the wrong dosage of something, or using, you know, the wrong name for an instrument. That's not how it works. So it is a test of your English, but it was designed for a specific purpose, and that's to get you to be able to practice in English-speaking countries. So Australia, the USA, Canada, New Zealand, the UK. Now, in all of these systems of healthcare, Shannad's right, you know, these are nurse-led systems. You know, the nurses have a great deal of responsibility in our healthcare system, and they do a lot of communication, and it doesn't all come through a specialist and all come through a doctor. And you know, you have to communicate with patients and their family and your colleagues and your peers and your seniors, and you have to be able to do it. You really do, to you know, to give the best level of care to the patients and the families. You need to be able to communicate with them like this, and not rely on somebody else to do that for you, or defer to someone else who you think might be more important than you. That's not how it works in the NHS. And equally, maybe I'm not the right person to speak on this. Maybe this is more Davina or Shawnad. But you know, if you want to get on, you know, coming to the NHS and starting at band 5 or band 6, depending if you're a midwife, you know, wherever you're starting, that doesn't have to be the end goal. You know, this is a system where you can, you know, you can improve, you can, you know, you can go up in bands, you can get different responsibility, different salary. But in order to do that, you need to be able to show that that's what you want, and you need to be able to speak to people about it. So speaking up and being articulate in those things is really important, and OET will help you with that.
Thank you. Well, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but please, if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. We will be coming back to you. We will answer your questions for sure. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We're here, you know, for now, so that's fine. What I do want to do, I do want to go over now to Davina, because I know that her time is very precious. Just to remind you all again, so Davina, she actually joined us, I think 2 to 2.5 years ago. Davina joined us from Mauritius. So I think that Davina and I were in contact for some time, and I do think you was trying to get the IELTS.
Yes, it's true.
And I remember you saying probably things like, I failed the IELTS and things like this. Yeah, so hearing now what Peter had to say, you know, it's not that you failed it, you just didn't achieve the required level for the NMC. So what I'd love to ask you, Davina, because I know that you've had quite a journey in getting to us, you know, things like not getting the IELTS, then deciding to do an OET preparation course to really get the practice in, and then you decided to make that switch. So I'd love to ask you just to share a little bit about that journey, and perhaps what the benefit for you in doing the OET preparation course. What difference did that make, having failed, well, when I say failed, having not achieved the level for the I'm going to really catch myself now, I'm never going to use that again, having not achieved the required IELTS score for the NMC, what difference did it make when you made that decision to go and do a prep course for OET?
Yes, you know, actually, when I would just say hello to everyone, I'm Davina. I've been here in the trust for nearly 3 years now, but I think Shona knows me way before that, I think since 2018. And when I began my application, obviously, you know, NMC requirements were different at that time. The IELTS requirements were higher. We needed to achieve like a 7 in all of the subtests. So I tried IELTS, I would say at least 3 to 4 times. I'll be completely honest, you know, I tried it 3 to 4 times, and each and every time I would miss in one of the subtests. So it was quite discouraging. I even went for a couple of, you know, face-to-face lessons with somebody. And then I said, no, I think I need to look at other options now. And I realized that OET was another test available for nurses. So I read a lot on OET, and I instantly knew that I think OET is more for a healthcare professional, because, you know, in IELTS, there are so many, you know, like Peter said, there are so many, you know, topics that you can come across on the day that you are not familiar with, you know, and during those tests that I've attempted in ALS, I've got many topics that I was really never had an opinion about it, never read about it, and I just don't know what to write, you know, even though, you know, you could put your English on a paper, but just you're not writing the points that they are asking in the questions. So I said, you know, let me go for OET. So I read a lot about it, and I realized, you know, OET is more for healthcare professionals. It is, I felt more confident and comfortable to take the test. But then I thought to myself, because OET wasn't available in Mauritius during that time, so where would I go for the test? So we were planning a holiday at the same time. I said, you know, I'll try it when I go on my holiday. I'll try it abroad. So I thought, you know, if I'm going to try for OET, I want to give it 100% because firstly, the test was more expensive than ALS. Secondly, I was going to pay for a flight ticket to go for the test. So I said, you know, let me try for some OET prep course and some practice test. So I decided to go for it. And then when I realized I started the practice test, I realized, you know, though you're familiar with all the medical terms and, you know, it's more healthcare specific, the test, but the structure of the exam is what you need to be familiar with. So the practice test and the prep course, that's when you get familiar with the structure of the test. I'll give you a small example if I'm not taking too much of everybody's time. You know, when I did the listening subtest, when I was practicing for the test, I realized when I compared it to ALS, it goes as a fastest pace when you listen to the audio. It goes at a faster pace, so which means, you know, you have to really be concentrating, not missing any word. So then if it's at the beginning of the practice test, I can never make it. You always used to miss so many words because you focus on one word, then you realize, you know, if they say, okay, paracetamol 10 milligrams. So you focus on the paracetamol, then you think, oh, how many milligrams did it say? You've missed it already. You can't go back. So these are the things. So the practices really helped me in, you know, becoming really quick at doing the test and not missing any words. And yeah, I think OET is more for nurses, if I have to compare to ALS, but some nurses have been really good at doing ALS. So I must say it's really, sometimes it depends on what you're confident about and what is your comfort level with all the topics. And I felt like I was more confident with OET. And I think the practice tests are really important in a way because your aim is not to have to go back to the test again. Your aim should not to be to retake the test. If you go for the test, you just want to make it in one go. And, you know, practice makes perfect. It helps with the in managing, you know, your time. You become good with your managing your time and more familiar with healthcare scenario, you know, with your day-to-day work, you're familiar with all the medical terms, yes, but not with scenario. I've realized when I did OET, you've got many topics in reading where you have to focus and just find what they want you to answer in the question. And the text can be complex because you don't deal with it every day. So that's where the practice tests are really, really helpful. So yeah, basically that's what OET is.
Thank you. Would you say that the self-study, because you did self-study preparation,
Yes.
didn't you? You didn't have a one-to-one private tutor. You chose to do this online through
Yes.
self-study.
Yes.
Would you say that what you were studying helped you when it came to sitting the OSCE when you came to the UK?
Yes, I would say yes. I mean, my journey when I joined the trust has been very positive, because I joined the trust, I work in the ward, that way I come familiar with many things, you know, with like, you know, like Shona said, it's a nurses led here. You do most of the talking. When you do a round with a doctor, the doctor will just tell you what needs or document. You have to go and relay that information to the patient. And, you know, it helps a lot with your communication skill. And eventually now I'm a gynae oncology nurse, and I'm supposed to start a clinic in 1 hour where I see patient. I would speak to them half an hour with each patient. You talk to the patient, you discuss everything, and you know, patient expect that from you, because they don't expect, you know, questions they will ask a nurse, they don't ask to doctors, I must say. And they really expect you to be good at what you're explaining to them. And I think OET has really helped me. And I would say that to everyone who's intending to join us or have already joined us. You know, we do referral letters here. We do a lot of letters. And when I did OET, when I did this practice test, I was practicing a lot of letters. And today this is really helping me when I dictate letters for my patients. So OET somehow is a totally different thing from ALS. It's really helpful, not only when you do the exam, but in near future when you're going to start work in the UK.
Yeah.
That's also something I just wanted to add. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much. I think for anybody listening, you know, I just think that for me, I think I've learned, you know, so much, and I live and breathe this all the time. You know, I'm dealing with international nurses, we're talking about IELTS, OET, but it's very much on a very surface level conversation. You know, we've kind of, I feel we've really got deep into the bones of it. You know, we've really gone deep into finding out what the differences are, and just, you know, the strategy and the structure of these exams, and actually, you know, what it's sort of requiring of you. So I think, you know, for me, this has been really, really beneficial. And I really hope for everybody who's joined us today, I really hope that you can take, you know, something away from this in helping you to make a decision. You know, at the end of the day, like Peter said, the choice is entirely up to you. You know, if you want to go down the IELTS route, if you want to go down the OET, there really is no wrong or right. It's just a decision. But we hope that maybe in sharing, you know, the information with you, that you can actually then make a very informed decision of what you feel is right for you. I have just popped into the chat for anybody who's not in our group. We actually have a Facebook group. It's purely for international nurses. You won't find anybody in the group who's not a nurse apart from myself, who's the moderator. But what we do in the group is we do share lots of information. You know, if there are things that are changing with the NMC, or if there's just things that we want to share with you, and we are looking to host these kind of webinars at least on a monthly. I'm hoping to try and do them bi-monthly, more webinars where we can just invite, you know, people who have come to join us internationally, more international nurses who can share other things about their journey with you. And then we will have ward managers, nurses, who can really come and sort of share more information with you as well about the NHS, what patients look like, you know, what does a nurse look like. So, you know, I'll put all of that information into the Facebook group. So the link is there. Is there any more questions? Does anybody have any questions? Now's your time, while you've got, you know, Peter, while you've got Davina here to talk to you. Oh, brilliant. Peter's also just shared the self-study course. So this is the 3-month.
That's right. So there's you get access to the self-study material. There is also a schedule of live lessons. So it's you know, it's not as flexible as having a private teacher, because you can't choose the time, but there's a schedule and a calendar, and you're welcome to go to as many lessons as you want while you have access to the material.
That's amazing. And there is a discount. There's 30% discount. This course should normally be
£79 the basic package. Yeah.
And I think we're offering them with about
my math isn't as good as my English, so it's 30% off. Somebody who's better at maths.
Yeah. I think it was somewhere around the 40 pounds,
something like that, yeah.
British pounds.
Yeah.
So a really great discount.
I mean, I don't need to do drug calculations on my end. That's you guys. You should have better maths than me.
Yeah. I think we've covered everything. I mean, I was going to ask you some questions as well, but I think you actually covered them in your presentation. I was going to talk to you about the pass rates, you know, whether IELTS or OET, which one generally globally got the better pass rate. And I think
it's interesting. It's the answer to your question. It's quite difficult to know, and it's for a few different reasons. Firstly, IELTS. Pre-pandemic, I haven't looked at the most recent numbers, but pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, about 5 million people took IELTS. It's a massive exam, and people use it for visas. People use it for university entry. As I said, people use it for other professions where they need to prove a level. So lots and lots of people take it. So the amount of nurses taking IELTS is actually quite small compared to the amount of everybody else. And IELTS don't produce any statistics saying this is how many nurses took it, this is how many people passed. So all we can really go on with IELTS is kind of global rates at different scores. And most people get a 5.5, a 6. Very fewer people get a 7, which is what we're looking for. So it's kind of in the teens. It's kind of in the 13-14% kind of range. Now, if you prepare properly, your chance is going to be much greater than that. It's all about preparation. Resources beside OET website. Use Hema. Go on our YouTube channel. We have about 200 hours of live lessons. And sorry, I'm just answering a comment in the chat, Sinead. Our YouTube channel, it's got full live lessons on it. It's got videos on particular sections like reading part A, listening part C, all in that. Let me find the link for you and put it in the chat, because it's hundreds of hours of stuff. So it will take a while for you to get through all of that, and you should really do that before you spend any money on anything, because it's free.
Absolutely. I can vouch for it. I actually did go and check out all of SLC's free stuff on the YouTube channel, and there's some brilliant stuff on there.
There you go, Hema. That's so global pass rates, not very high, and preparation obviously improves that. But we do know anecdotally from recruitment companies and from NHS employers that, just like Davina said, lots of people take it lots of times. That people take it 3 times, 4 times, so the first time pass rates for IELTS, I said pass rates, but the first time get a 7 for a nurse, it's quite low. So if you're taking IELTS without preparation, it's risky. If you're taking it with preparation, you may end up taking it twice anyway, and then building, with, okay, this is the paper I need to work on, this is the skill I need to work on. So use the first attempt as your way to improve. With OET, again, OET don't publish any results. These exam companies, I mean, I'll be careful what I say because I'm being recorded. But it's not in the interests of the exam companies to say things are very hard and you might not pass, because they want people to take the test. Their businesses, it's a commercial thing. So they don't publish results. But what happens is that the main market for growth for an exam like OET is the places that the UK and the US and Australia recruit international staff from. Okay, so actually most people taking the OET test are not in England or Spain or Italy. They're in the Philippines and India and Sri Lanka, parts of Africa, So, and the schools there, the operations there are not as experienced or technically advanced to give good preparation. So lots of people who take the test aren't actually preparing that well, hence the numbers being low. But they're still high. They're higher than ours. But if you prepare for if you prepare for OET, your pass rate is definitely going to be higher than your pass rate for IELTS.
Yeah.
So it's around, I mean, I can only speak to managed programs that we run at the moment, but you'd look at something in the kind of 40 to 45% first time pass rate, and then a 70+% second time pass rate, kind of 72, 73%, which is significantly higher than IELTS.
Yeah. Someone's just mentioned here in the chat, what about the duration? So they're talking about your Reach OETB prep course.
Oh, yes.
He's asking how long, what's the duration of this course?
You get access to it for 3 months.
Brilliant.
And you can use it on your phone as well. But honestly, Sharmanpreet, go on the YouTube site first. You know, there's so much stuff on there. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of content.
And then Harshani has mentioned that she's from Sri Lanka. Now, I know that Sri Lanka do have OET schools, and are they connected with SLC, or are they connected with NHS England?
So
I do believe there are schools.
Are you? I would say, Harshani, depends on what your timeline is for when you want to do things. But Sri Lanka is a country now that things are becoming more settled and things are returning to normal. That is a very interesting place for international recruitment. So what you will find in the coming weeks and months is that there are more recruitment companies visiting. There are more trusts visiting. I know Shaunad's interested in Sri Lanka, but importantly, NHS England is interested in Sri Lanka, and NHS England are supporting quite a few different projects in Sri Lanka to help local providers give better preparation, and SLC is helping with that. So what I would say in Sri Lanka at the moment, Harshani, is if you were able to wait and see, and maybe you'll get an email from Shaunad or NHS England, if you're able to wait and see if there's some support available for you, that might be a good thing to do, because it's a place that people are looking very seriously at. But if you need to do it sooner, or you want to come sooner, you want to take your test, just make sure you're working with an accredited provider, because there's lots of unaccredited providers in Sri Lanka and parts of India as well, that are not going to give you the best advice. So make sure that they've got their accreditation stamp.
Yeah. Oh, we've got a few here from Sri Lanka. So
fabulous. Yeah.
And I would just say as well, I think, first kind of place to stop would be, I think, the YouTube channel, if you've not already done so. If any of you have attempted or even looked at the OET to begin with, then maybe look there. And then if not, maybe then as the next step, it would then be to maybe consider investing and definitely taking advantage of our discount, so that you can get this 3-month preparation course for £40 British. Obviously that's a lot. It's less expensive than it would be normally. And like Davina said, just going back to what Davina said, she did attempt to do the IELTS on so many. Now, yes, IELTS, the exam is initially cheaper, it's less expensive. However, sometimes if you're sitting it and not getting the grade that you need to sit the OET, it is more expensive, but actually, if it's more relevant, you may end up spending the same as what you would have done had you just decided to do OET in the first place.
I just really feel with both exams, don't take either of these exams. Not unless you think you're ready. You thinking you're ready is a good thing. If you think you're ready, that's great, because that's positive affirmation. If you're ready, you're ready. But really, don't spend the money on an expensive exam unless you've done some practice, you've done some preparation. And best thing would be if somebody can grade your writing or grade your speak. Somebody who is a teacher who knows how the scoring works can then say, yeah, you'll get a 6.5 with that. You need to do this and this, or that's a 6, or that's you need before you take the exam, rather than spend the money on the exam. Wait another month and just make sure that you are ready, and that you've had some advice that you're ready, because that's much better than having to do it again.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. I would say don't convince yourself that OET is easier than us as well,
Yeah.
because that's because you feel, oh, it's all healthcare specific, I can
Yeah,
do
it's not
it.
easier. No.
Yeah, that's why the prep course and the practice test are
And
very important.
Davina, you're right. I mean, when OET got accepted by the NMC, when they first made the announcement a few years ago, I saw it. I saw it in WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, in India, in Sri Lanka, in Southeast Asia. Oh wow, now we don't need IELTS anymore. This is going to be way easier. This is going to be easier, right? Now we all do this, and then we're all gonna pass. Well, you're not.
No.
You're not if you don't prepare and you don't have the level of English required. So it's not easier. So that, but it is, as you know, a bit more fun, more relevant, more useful to other areas of your career. So there's lots going for it, lots of positive things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I used to think to myself when I was doing the practice test, oh, that's, it's a bit, fun to do the practice test. But when I was doing ours, I was saying to myself, oh my God, I don't know what topic is it now.
Yeah. One of the students, I don't do so much teaching anymore because, well, I do things like this, and I work with the NHS. I don't teach as much as I used to. But one of the students that I remember when OET first got accepted, she was a Filipino nurse. And she had a job offer for Great Ormond Street Hospital, Children's Hospital. So, it's already pulling at my heartstrings a bit. She was absolutely lovely, and she wanted to go and help the kids, and she was a great nurse, and she spoke fantastic English. And then we were talking about IELTS, and it was like, okay, well, how did you do on your last IELTS? And she's like, well, sat down to the IELTS writing paper, and the essay question was, how are desert formations, how do desert formations occur? It was like a science question on how the size of deserts or the formation of sand, and she's like, and I looked at it, and I just didn't even try, because I just thought that is just, it's silly. I don't know anything about this, and it was really, really disheartening for her.
Yeah.
But great level of English and some preparation on OET, and she passed straight away. So, it's not to say that will happen for everyone. You pass straight away. It happened for you. It happened for her. But certainly it's more within your control. It's not easier, but it's within your control. It's clinical communication. It's medical language. It's much more narrow, so that you can focus in and learn the right stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it would be more relevant talking about how would you talk about discharging a patient back into the community, rather than you would talking about how a desert's formed. So yeah. Well, I would just like to say thank you to everybody here today. I think this has been really, really brilliant. We've got, I think we've got over 15 people on the call with us today. This is being recorded, so it will be available for replay as well. We'll get that uploaded and saved into our Facebook community as well. So the link is there. It will also be on YouTube. So I'd like to thank everybody who's taken the time to join us today. Really special thanks to Peter and to Davina. It's been so beneficial. Is there anything anyone would like to say before we close? I think we've taken just over an hour of everybody's time. So yeah, I just want to say thank you. I think it's been beneficial looking at the comments in the chat. Someone's just typing something. Delini, just thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, something else is YouTube, but also on our Facebook page, once a month there is a live Q&A with the lady that you'll see on our videos, Jo, who's our senior teacher. She does our videos for YouTube, but once a month she does a live question and answer session on Facebook as well. So if you're studying, it doesn't matter if you're our student or not, you can just go on and ask questions about OET and different parts of the papers and so on.
Oh, wow. We've just got a message here from Hema, who has said, thank you, everyone, especially to Davina, who was my classmate in nursing school.
Oh, wow.
She's so happy to see you after so long.
Oh, hi, Hema. Yeah, I remember.
Hi, small world.
Yes,
that's incredible.
Yeah, I
And
think Mauritius
actually-
is a small island.
and you're going to Mauritius, aren't you, Davina?
Yeah, I'm in August for the whole month. So if anyone wants to catch up with me, can just message me. I'm happy to catch up and advise. And yeah.
That's amazing. Right, well, thank you to everybody. I don't want to take any more time, Davina. I know you've got clinic. Peter, I know
Yes,
you're
I'm
busy.
gonna-
So thank you so much to everybody. Yeah, I really hope that served everyone really well. And we'll look
Great.
forward to sharing the next webinar with you all.
Okay, speak to you soon. Thanks,
All
everyone.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, hello
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.